On today's episode of the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast, I'm talking with Reshaunda Thornton, a registered dietitian and public speaker, and she's going to be telling us some great tips about how to fuel your body better by just making some small, easy-to-digest changes. I hope you enjoy this episode, and if you do, please subscribe to our podcast so you get notified of future episodes.
You're listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast with Dr. Dave Candy, St. Louis's leading expert in chronic pain relief. Dr. Candy specializes in helping women age 40 and above to overcome chronic, nagging aches and pains without medication, injections, or surgery, so they can stay active, mobile, healthy, and independent. Whether you're suffering from pain yourself or know someone who is, pain's a universal experience that affects us all, but that doesn't mean you have to suffer. Knowledge is power, and having the right information can help you or someone you love get on the road to recovery. On the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast, Dr. Candy talks with other pain experts from around the world to give you the information you need to recover, the peace of mind of knowing that you're not alone, and the hope that lasting relief from chronic pain is possible, and it doesn't require relying on pills, injections, or surgery in order to do so. So sit back, relax, and open your ears, mind, and heart, and let the healing begin.
Welcome to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Dave Candy. I have with me here today Reshaunda Thornton. Reshaunda is a registered dietitian, and if you're watching this on YouTube, you can see she has a whole other host of letters behind her name as well. So I'm going to let her introduce herself, and then we'll have a little bit of a conversation about how your nutrition affects your health, and both from a physical and mental perspective. So here's Reshaunda. Reshaunda, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, you're welcome. And Dave, thanks for inviting me, having me be a part of your podcast. I really appreciate it. Just to give a little bit of insight of like who I am and what I do for a living. So as far as a healthcare professional, I'm a registered and licensed dietitian. I do specialize in wellness and sports dietetics. So working with a lot of active people, athletes is something that's very, something that I do quite frequently. But on the other ends of what I do, I actually have a private practice. I own my own business. I have a private consultation practice called BetterVessel Nutrition. So that's more so in-depth work with individual clients where I create customized nutrition programs. I help coach them through their nutrition lifestyle. I help to build their toolbox so they can be more successful and sustainable changes. Another couple of things that I do, I'm really big on, so as a dietitian, it's really important that we influence, not just educate. So I have a lot of media platforms where I create influence, whether it's working here in St. Louis on Fox 2 News as the nutrition expert. I have a book called Play to Win Your Food Fight. I also have a podcast show called The Dietitian Against Diets. And last but not least, I've done a lot of speaking engagements. If you guys are take a look at my YouTube channel. I did a TED Talk last year regarding my approach to nutrition. So just to bring it all together, I'm really passionate about helping people to find their way to live healthy lives, but also helping them to understand how they can continue to be successful by not feeling they have to be relegated to a particular one-way way of eating. So that's kind of the overall approach to how I look at nutrition and what I do as a dietitian.
Well, that's great to have an open mind and overall well-rounded approach. I know one of the questions that I get asked about a lot about nutrition, and I'm not even, that's not even my forte, but what about this diet? Or what about this? Well, what about South Beach? What about Atkins? Well, that one hasn't been a while. What about keto? All the things that kind of come and go, but what are some general guidelines you give to someone who's just looking to improve their diet but doesn't really know where to start?
Yeah, and that's a good question because a lot of times that's the reason why people do follow diets, because there's so much information out there. They really don't know what to tackle, what to approach, or too many different things happen to where they just try to lean on one particular route. And sometimes that route is not for you, so when it comes to just how can we create our first steps, for me, I believe in just simplification. So I'm just really big about just making sure, don't look at your way of eating as taken away. Because most of the time we think when we eat healthy, we have to take this away. We can't have that. We feel like we're like in this cage or we have to stay inside of to be healthy. Well, consider the thought process of giving yourself more, not taking away. And when I say giving yourself more, this is the premise of simple steps. Incorporate just more fresh fruits and vegetables. I mean, we've heard it. We've heard our parents say it and everyone that around us, but it's very true. Bringing in more clean, natural foods into your plate, that's giving your body more nutrients. And when you give your body more, you just feel better. You thrive better. So bringing in just more fruits and vegetables is going to be one of the first steps. And then you got to think about, obviously, behavioral habits is something that's hard for us to kind of overcome. So, for me, I know that for people that want to live healthy lives, the thought process is really kind of gets to them, a lot of times it's a mental game. So when you're wanting to start eating healthy, when you start, the way you start thinking, you want to start thinking about, what changes can I make now that I can keep making moving forward in my life, which means if you have 10 things you want to change, just narrow down to 2, just work on those 2. So just find what are the areas in your life where you find that it's hard to, when it's too many different lists of things you want to tackle with nutrition, start off simple. It's a mental game. So that's mental game 1. Start off with just fresh fruits and vegetables and then just drink more water. And when you do that, when you add more fruits and vegetables to your plate, some of the other higher fatty or more sugar-laced things kind of leave your plate. And then when you start drinking more water, some of the other beverages that you may drink that may be soda or juice or something that's high in sugar, you start drinking less. So understand the concept is just transitioning new things. And sometimes the old things will start falling off.
So rather than focusing on the negative, I can't have this or can't have that, you're putting more of the good in and making less room for the bad, in other words.
That's pretty much, yeah.
So you had mentioned, giving your body more of the right things and giving more, when you're healing from an injury, what are some of the things that you need from a nutrition perspective to enable your body to heal well?
Well, I always say this, when it comes to our foods and what helps us make the choices that we feel best serves us. I look at food or nutrition as something that heals our body because it provides our body with all the minerals and nutrients, all the macro and micronutrients, everything that we need for our body to thrive. So when it comes to how can, when you're thinking about your way of living, your way of eating, you want to bring in foods that's going to best serve you and your health. And the byproduct of that your body is naturally going to heal more effectively and more efficiently. And that's what we want, especially when it comes to our immunity system. But key foods in regards to how we're going to give our body that ability to heal, focus on, your vitamins, and we know that our vitamins comes from different sources of anywhere from grains to fruits and vegetables. So focus on getting a variety of vitamins. And your body would naturally use those components to just re-heal itself from within. But what you want to do also is make sure you're taking out the processed stuff. So when I say processed stuff, anytime you have a food that it has been taken away from its natural source, all those nutrients are gleaned out. They're not there. They're artificial nutrients are placed in there, but it doesn't serve your body the same way as it would if it was natural. So eliminate some of that processed food will give your body room and space to where it actually can heal, to where it's not inhibiting its healing process. So sometimes it's not just about what you're giving into your body, it's what you're also not bringing into your body. So taking away high fatty, high sugar foods that are either frozen, that has been manipulated in a way that doesn't really mimic what the real food looks like, or thinking about foods that have extra preservatives put in there. You have to think about preservatives are used to create longer shelf life. Preservatives are used to help to maintain the structure of a particular food. If we're ingesting those preservatives, then those same type of chemicals and additives are coming into our system. And again, our body there isn't any nutrients coming out of that. So how is our body going to be able to heal if we're bringing in foods that are highly processed or have a lot of additives and preservatives in it? So really just focus on bringing in natural foods, which will provide all those minerals that I just talked about and vitamins, and your body will naturally start to heal within itself.
Well, great. So sounds like you mentioned sustainability before, that finding 2 things that you can stick with over the long term, that if you're eating right all the time and you're making those sustainable changes, that you might not have to make that much of a different change when you are healing from something.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love to say all the time, and that if we're just being human and being honest with ourselves, we may not eat healthy all the time. And I think that's okay, because you don't want to put that pressure yourself to feel like you have to eat healthy all the time. It'll be great. Your body would love it. But that can be difficult for us to do just psychologically. So I'm really big. I have a saying I call it being an 85% club. Being your 85% club, you're focusing on 85% of your day. You're bringing in foods that best serve you, that's healthy for you. And then you have a balance of maybe some foods that just maybe tasteful on the tongue. Could be something that you really enjoy, but having a small amount. And if you can keep a consistency of 85, 85, 85, 85, multiplied out times months and years, there'll be much more change that you will have just by standing at a straight 85 versus feeling like I have to be 100%. Because if you try to do that, that's not sustainable. You may be 100% Monday. Okay, by Thursday, you're trying to down at 45%. Okay, Saturday, you're kind of like at a 15%, and then you're back at 100%. So you're kind of just like fluctuating when you try to be perfect. So just really focus on just being a good B+ consistently each day, and you will see a lot more change. And you'll feel so much better by taking that approach.
That's great. It kind of removes some of the pressure of not having to be 100% all the time.
Yes, it does. And it's good for our mind too. We already have a lot of stresses, especially right now during the pandemic. Everyone's questioning what life is going to look like next year. So there's a lot of pressure that we're having. So the last thing we need is that additional pressure on feel like we also have to have this, we also have to have perfection in our foods. That's only adding more stress to us. It's only adding more, it's not helping us. It's not helping our cause, it's actually hurting our cause. So just, you always want to, a lot of times people have a very unorthodox relationship with food, to where they look at food, they love it and hate it. It's a love-hate relationship with this thing called what's food, And so you want people to be in a position where they actually enjoy eating. They look forward to eating. They don't have a negative connotation to certain foods. That's where the balance comes in. So you notice when I say balance, I didn't say bring in unhealthy food or bad food. I don't give food labels. I call it balance because you want to bring in what's best serves your body, but you also want to bring in that balance where you want to have things that you enjoy. There's nothing wrong with it if you're eating more of the healthy, nutritious foods more often and more frequently. You can do that and multiply that out for days and for years without feeling like, you shouldn't feel bad if you decide to have an oatmeal cookie or, you shouldn't feel bad. But again, giving people that mentality of just learning how to find that balance throughout the day, they would be a lot more successful. And it takes away, like I say, that stress, and we don't need any additional stress right now in our lives.
That's very true. Yeah. I get asked a lot when people are recovering about anti-inflammatory diets and anti-inflammatory foods. Are there any specific foods that either are highly inflammatory that you notice or that tend to be anti-inflammatory? Yeah.
So when you want to think about like inflammation and what triggers inflammation and what keeps inflammation at a high, obviously we know we have two different types of inflammation: acute and chronic. Acute is when you sprain your ankle and all the blood rushes and there's inflammation there, but chronic is more systemic, where it can cause more health conditions down the road because it's more internal. And unfortunately, the chronic inflammation, sometimes we don't recognize it because our body is just at a constant state of inflammation. And that's where, again, it creates opportunity for other health conditions down the road. So to understand, like, how can you, if you may not feel inflammation, your body's maybe sitting at this state of inflammation, just start bringing in foods that are going to help address that. And most of your foods that are going to be based on anti-inflammation is going to be like your healthy fats. As far as your healthy fats, sometimes people don't really know what that means. Sometimes healthy and fat kind of don't go together. Well, those are your unsaturated fat, more so your plant oils, your plant-based fats. That's really the easiest way to decipher between your saturated fats, which is your unhealthy fats, and your unsaturated fats, is that one is going to be plant-based and one is going to be animal-based. That's the simplest way. So what does that mean? All your different plant oils, your avocados, your nuts, and your seeds, your omega-3s, your flax seeds. Those are going to be in from your fish, your fatty fishes. Those are going to be the types of healthy fat that's going to help with decrease inflammation. What fats will, only agitate inflammation will be your more saturated, heavier fats. And that's going to be your butters, your animal fats, processed food. A lot of processed foods like cakes and pastries and pies, they have hydrogenated oil in them. And hydrogenated oil is highly saturated. And when it comes to our health, it doesn't help with inflammation. So it kind of brings back me to my first point about once we start letting go of a lot of high salty and highly processed and high fatty foods, we're going to take away our body. We're going to help our body combat inflammation. But the more we put that in our system, it's going to stay at that state. So those would be my easy just ways to decipher and know what foods will help with inflammation. As far as there's some other spices that's really good for joint inflammation. So we have turmeric. Turmeric is known to help with inflammation, but not just turmeric, but turmeric with curcumin in it, which is like a pepper. It's in the pepper family. That helps with the absorption of the turmeric. So making sure if you're, some people, when it comes to spices, there are a lot of spices that have healing components, and spices are something that won't ever give us won't ever be something negative to our body. They will only enhance and help our body out. So even considering what type of supplements or certain foods that have turmeric in it, that'll really help with the joint inflammation, especially your knees and things like that. But just for your body internal inflammation, just making sure you're bringing in those healthy fats, that will help. And that's where you get those anti-inflammatory diets. That's really foods that have the olive oils, the Mediterranean diets. Those are kind of along those lines.
You had talked about turmeric. Is there any minimal effective dose as far as getting that from food sources?
Well, it's kind of hard to get it from food sources. To get, typically you would have to get it in supplement form. Well, you'll have capsule form, and you can find any health food store. You go to, if you're here in St. Louis, there are a lot of health food stores. You got Fresh Thyme, you got Whole Foods. Some of the stores you can just go into and you'll see different brands, but they're all reputable. Again, you want to make sure it has curcumin in it, because curcumin is a derivative of turmeric, which is what helps with inflammation. So don't just get turmeric, you got to get the one with curcumin in it, because that's what's going to target that inflammation. But I would say, for me personally, as far as absorption rate and ability to really metabolize in your system, you probably want to get it in bolus amounts like the capsules versus just, some people have turmeric, they have the frat the milk that people make, or they put turmeric in their oatmeal, which is great, but it's not going to be enough to help to address the inflammation as much as the daily dosage of the capsules would.
When I had first heard about turmeric, I had looked into it, and I can't remember the exact amount, but nobody would want to eat that amount of turmeric, what you would need to get the dosage of the capsule. So it would be a lot.
May not be that tasty.
Probably not. Now, on the other end of things, you'd mentioned eliminating some of the saturated fats, and some of the fad diets out there these days actually encourage large amounts of heavy cream, large amounts of butter, large amounts of lards and fatty meat, which are all natural, so to speak. But how much is too much, and does it have any detrimental effects?
According to the standards of our universal intake of fat, we should have anywhere from 46 to I think it's 58 grams of fat per day. To me that relatively can be on the high end, depending on what kind of fat you're having. So as far as the amount of fat that we're supposed to have at our daily intake, that's the window. But when it comes to what type of fat, that's the deal breaker, because first of all, the way fat digests, it digests 2 times slower in our body than the protein and carbohydrates that we eat. So it's very slow burning. It takes a long time to break down fat. And when your body don't have the ability to break down that fat, because it takes so long to break down, it quickly can become storage, which is adipose tissue. So when people are implementing the unhealthy fats or the saturated fats into their body, it's probably perhaps because it may be in a diet like the Atkins diet, where they want to take a complete food group out, where you're taking out carbohydrates, so your body is readjusting its fueling system where it's burning fat. that it has long-term repercussions, because what happens when you're just bringing in that much fat into your system, your body's not burning it off, it's turning into stored energy, which is fat tissue, which contributes to our health conditions. Then you have a saturated fat, so you got to think about, your arteries and your heart. Like, that's where we get high cholesterol. That's where we get cardiovascular disease. We get obesity. We get health conditions when we're bringing in those unhealthy saturated fats. Now, unsaturated fats. Now, unsaturated fats, on the other end, they mobilize and they act totally different than saturated fats. They don't contribute to your triglyceride levels. They don't contribute to your your LDLs. They actually contribute to your good cholesterol, which is what we want to continue to increase up. So I wouldn't recommend, if you're going to do a diet where there's more heavier in fats, I really would not recommend ones that are, even though it's natural, doesn't mean it's good for our body. So anything that's more of animal-based, lard, shortening, butter, maybe olive oil-based, fats, be lower in cholesterol, which is a plant fat, but not necessarily animal fats. I wouldn't recommend that.
Okay. Well, you've given a lot of just great pieces of information. Are there any summary points that you would use and you've probably kind of given a few of them out throughout the show, but what are the few things that someone should start to focus on if they'd like to start to take action now?
Yeah, I would just say really evaluate what you want for your life and your health. Only way if you want to change, whether it's your health status or change your body composition, whatever it is you want to change, in order to change, you have to change. So just on the realization it's going to require work to do it, but it's worth it. It's worth your life. It's worth your quality of life. It's worth, the people that you're surrounded by that you want to love and care for. You want to provide a life that you deserve. So to me, that thought process is the first thing that has to be established. In order to change, you have to change. So what does that change look like? People hear it all the time, taking small steps. It's a real thing to take small steps, because we feel like to be successful, we have to do everything at one time. And if we don't do everything at one time, we're a failure. We messed up. We won't get it right. We're setting ourselves up to fail. We're not setting ourselves up for success. So when it comes to changes, big changes is not really the idea of what you want to do when it comes to your health. You want to have smaller change so you can organically, naturally build upon that, to where you start eating more fruits and vegetables and you start drinking more water. You start having more energy. You start feeling good. You start being able to sleep better. You're not as agitated anymore. You just internally start feeling better. So now you like that. You're getting used to that. So now we're going to start bringing in, making sure we're baking all our meats or having lean meats, making sure we're having whole grain products, those cupcakes are not just as good as they used to be. Or if I drink the soda, it makes me feel all jittery. And I don't like the way that feels anymore. You start to realize new things as you're slowly building on it. But if you don't start with something, you'd never even get to that point. So I would encourage people just to start simple. Don't make it complicated. Drink more water, have more fresh fruits and vegetables. Do that first. Swap your snacks, throw out the chips and the candy bars, and bring in fruits, bring in trail mixes, bring in popcorn, bring in something that's light, that's still satisfied, the crunchy, salty, that's not going to be processed. So when you start cleaning out the system a little bit, start adding more nutrients, your body start responding. And, when it comes to inflammation and when it comes to just your overall health, it just naturally starts to grow. And guess what's happening now? Change is happening. And that's how you start. Just start with the mindset, then start simple and just build upon that. Don't try to shift your gear into 6 gears. Stay at second until you're used to second, then shift to third. But going from first gear to fourth or fifth, automatically you're not ready for that. You're setting yourself up for failure. So just start easy. Give yourself grace, be 85%er, be an 85% club, and you'll be on your way.
Oh, that's great. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us. If there are people out there who would like to get in touch with you that need something a little more in depth than the pointers that you just mentioned, how can they get in touch with you at your clinical practice as well as some of the online resources that you mentioned that you have?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, I as I said, I have a private practice. I work with people individually, and that can be in person. I have a home office here in Kirkwood, or I do a lot of remote clients. I have clients from across the country that I work with. So it can be done with contact without any contact. But if you go to my website, you'll be able to find information about my consulting. You'll see things like my podcast. You see everything about me. You see my TED Talk on there. It's ReshaundaThornton.com. And that's ReshaundaThornton, THORNTON.com. And if you're on Instagram, it's the dietitian against diets. But again, if you go to my website, everything is on that platform. The only other thing I do know that, as I said earlier, I have a book that I've written, and it's released about a year ago. It's called Play to Win Your Food Fight. And I call it a book of tools, not rules. So it's a self-help nutrition book to help guide you through the struggles that you face on a regular basis when it comes to nutrition. So in order to make sure that I'm making an impact, I created a 4-week nutrition workshop that's based off the book Play to Win. So anyone that wants to sign up, they go to my website, they get more information. I only let 10 people in at one time. And those 10 people, every week for 4 weeks, we dig into the book, we work through it, and we start to make real heavy changes in the way we think, the way we interact with food, and the goal is to be more successful coming out of it. So go to my website again, you get some of the information, you can follow me on different points, you can sign up for the newsletter. There's multiple ways to reach out to me, or you can simply just email me.
Well, thanks again, Reshaunda. We'll get all that information up in our show notes so that anyone who's listening to this on audio can find you and get in touch. And thanks again for your time today.
Yes, and thank you so much. Great talking with you.
Thanks for listening to the St. Louis Pain Expert Podcast. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you live in the St. Louis area and would like Dr. Candy's help to find a solution to your pain, visit our website at stlpainexpert.com. Email Dr. Candy at dave@stlpainexpert.com or call Dr. Candy's clinical practice, Movement for Life, at 314-941-3970. Movement for Life offers free consultations called discovery visits to people who are serious about discovering how they can relieve their pain and get back to the happy, healthy, and active lifestyle they deserve. If you're listening from outside the St. Louis area but would still like some help, feel free to contact us to learn more about our virtual health coaching. Regardless of where you live, please share our podcast with anyone you know who would benefit from learning more about pain and what can be done to relieve it. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or your other favorite podcast platform so you get notified when we release a new episode. Thanks again for listening, and we hope you'll enjoy us again soon.